Good morning, New Hope. My name's Travis Schaefer. I have spoke up here before a couple times. ER nurse for 10 years. So Rob wanted me to come up and speak on what kind of a connection technology can have to the medical side of situations, okay? The big thing that we have to understand is, to do this well, we have to embrace both the digital and the analog side of things. Okay, we can't do one or the other. We have to kind of blend it together nowadays. Now, I know some of you would say, well, I could just completely disconnect and move off the grid and be all by myself. Kudos, good for you if you can do that. And if that makes you happy, I want you to do that, but that's not the vast majority of people's lifestyles that they can undertake. But with this idea of being both digital and analog, we have to make sure that we keep some things in mind, right? We have an image over here of God has no phone, but I will still talk to him. He has no Facebook, but he is still my friend. He doesn't have a Twitter account, but I still follow him. So this is just kind of a playful thing to keep us engaged on both sides of things, both the analog and the digital side of things. With this, we also have things that have to do from a medical perspective that we have to take into account when we're blending these two things together. There's actual physical concrete science that kind of corresponds with our usage of this technology. The video that we've got will kind of lead me into what I want to talk about this kind of thing. So there you have it. It's one of those things where we oftentimes minimize this kind of a problem, right? It's not that big of a deal that my teenage daughter or son are on Facebook. There's no repercussions or misgivings or anything that I have about that kind of situation. But in reality, this can sometimes be as serious as a medical condition as a heart attack. So this technology dependence that sometimes we let ourselves get into has a huge stratification of issues, right? So from a benign stratification, it's got things like tech neck, is what they call it, where your head's bent so much that it causes the vertebrae, the disc in between your vertebrae, to degenerate, causing pinched nerves, back pain, neck pain, for chronic issues for the rest of your life. Another thing that I've seen myself is text thumb. So it's a condition called tendinosynovitis, which is where the tendon that goes down actually becomes inflamed from how much you text message. Now, let me tell you, that was really, really fun trying to sit in front of this guy with a straight face going, your thumb hurts because you text too much, and him going, yeah, but I can't stop texting. Okay, well, you have an injury. You need to, wear a brace and stop texting as much with that hand. Try using the other hand, or maybe making a phone call. Things I never thought that I would see in the ER in any of my days, like people walking into walls and things like that. And these videos and everything, these are funny, right? Like it's hilarious that this is a problem in our society, but there's some more severity to it too. You think about distracted drivers, the instance of that truck driver killing an officer because he was texting on his phone and plowed into him doing 70 miles an hour on a highway. You think about things like what kind of effects that this has from a mental perspective. The video said, the more we use technology, we release dopamine into our system. Dopamine is exactly the same hormone that we get from smoking, drinking, any kind of euphoric type of state that we get. That's dopamine being released into our system. The problem with that is also what is released in our system is called a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol causes us to have increase in body weight, causes depression, causes us to be more inclined to have diabetes, all these things. So there are definite repercussions of you looking down at your phone, running into a wall and busting your head open from not paying attention to what you're doing. There's much more critical issues that this has to do with as well. Suicide being one of the utmost portions of this. Depression and everything in this society today is running rampant. From 2006 to 2016, our country's suicide rate has gone 30% increase. 30%. That's astronomical. That is a lot of people taking their lives from one year to the next. So all these things kind of correlate with this use of technology. Now, I can't pin all of it, onto technology. Like, there's obviously other reasons that people commit suicide and things like that. However, that is a huge chunk of that 30% increase. And the other things that we kind of tend to do is to minimize these situations, like texting and driving and things like that. There's some significant consequences to these type of behaviors. Here's a video that'll illustrate that. So what do you guys think? It's a lot harder to rationalize and minimize a problem when it slams you in the face, isn't it? That's kind of tends to be what we all do, right? We all rationalize our use for these type of things. It could be an emergency. I might have an emergency. My kids might need me. My mom might need me. My dad might need me. Yeah, well, they might need you. That's true. But what if that's your last text message ever to them? It's easy to minimize this stuff, to rationalize it, to fit within our needs for our life. But until you're presented with this problem smacked you in the face, yeah, you might be able to get away with it with your whole life with never having an issue. But it might be that one time that you have that issue, that you either cause this accident, cause JC to no longer have her parents, cause her to deal with not having half the use of her body, not having the ability to be able to live a normal life. Or you might be the flip side of that. You might be the one who passes away from this injury. So, and I'm not standing up here chastising all of you about that. Like, I'm as guilty as the next person that has done it in the past, and understand that it's a mistake that we all make, but it's a mistake that we have the ability to fix. It doesn't matter if you've got to turn your phone off, put it in a bag all the way at the back of your car. If that's what it takes for you not to look at your phone when you're driving and utilizing this technology, that's what you should do. Okay? Now, that's kind of where I was leading into. So Acts 5, 1 through 11 tells us the story. And again, I'm very, very sorry. I cannot pronounce this man's name or his wife, so I'm not going to try. But the story tells us about a man who tells Peter that he will sell his land and give all the money to God. So he does so. He sells his land, gets the money, splits it into two piles, keeps one for himself and his wife, and gives the other one to Peter. Peter says, "Is this everything that you got from your land?" And the man says, "No." Or he says, "Yes, that's everything. You got it. You got it." And Peter says, "No, you're lying. You're lying in the face of God." It's not that he kept his property. It's that he told God that that's what he was going to do and went back on it. So the man realized this, was stricken with fear, fell dead. Clean up on aisle 6. We need to get this mess up. So people came, collected his body, took him away. His wife then came in, said pretty much the same thing. Peter said, "Is this the price that your husband got for the land?" She said, "Yeah, that's it." He said, "Again, you're lying in the face of God." She was stricken with fear and fell dead. This story is to allude to the fact that some of the times the things that don't seem like a big deal are often more important and serious than they appear. So don't be fooled by that rational sense of, I don't need to worry about the technology that I'm using because it doesn't have a direct effect in my life. Yeah, until it does. Until you cause the situation like JC, or until you're no longer a part of this world anymore. So these are the more obvious and direct means that can sometimes affect us from a medical standpoint when it comes to technology. Now, there are many others. The biggest I already alluded to is the depression and emotional context of which we use social media. And I've got a few different directives that I want to go through with you on that. The first one is disconnection, disconnected. Lacking a context or contact with reality. So what I mean here is using Facebook, social media in a frame of reference to completely detach yourself from reality, right? It's easy to hide behind a Facebook mask. I'm happy. Look at me being happy. Look at all the pictures of me being happy in life. I'm so happy all the time. When really, that person's hiding shame, guilt, fear. They're a broken person. But nobody's allowed to see that because Facebook shows us that we're happy. And then we get spiraled into this whole entire self-delusional state where we try and portray this person that's Facebook and happy and go lucky and everything's good. And we're hiding all of these fears and shames and self-deprecating thoughts. And we don't get help because we're hiding behind that mask. There's that concept of leading, to keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, well, this person's happy, so I have to be as happy as this person. And it creates this cycle of just ill content with yourself and ill content with your life. And if you constantly are putting this image up, but every day you wake up in the mirror and you see you instead of the Facebook you, what do you think that does to your psyche? It affects you. That can lead to depression. Depression can lead to thoughts of not wanting to be around anymore. I'm so sad and disgruntled with the way that my life is now because I feel like I should be this person. And because I feel like this, I don't know if I should be around anymore. Those thoughts lead to thoughts of, well, if I was not going to be around anymore, who would that affect? I don't feel like it would affect as many people as they say would affect, and I feel like I could do it this way. That's what suicide looks like, people. It's not this blink of an eye, flip a switch, I'm here 1 minute and I want to be dead the next. The vast majority of times that it sets in, it's insidious. It seeps in over time, and we develop this mindset of it's not worth it to be around anymore. Social media can definitely lead into this, especially with like teens and young people. The vast majority of psych patients that I interact with that are teens and young people, this is the cause of it. Well, somebody said I was fat on Facebook, or somebody said I wasn't smart or pretty, or et cetera, and that affects them deeply. You have to remember back to the first video. This generation that we have now is the most affected by this because their self-confidence is at its lowest point that it's ever been. Now, I know some of the generation that maybe hasn't had Facebook around their whole life and hasn't incorporated into that might think, they just need to develop tough skin, thicker skin, stiff upper lip, people. Okay. Do you think a generation that is at the lowest level of self-confidence ever recorded is gonna respond well to fuck up, get tough? No. They have validity in how they feel. Now, I'm not saying that they should continue to be the way that they are, but I think it's our responsibility as parents, mentors, people who love them, to help them develop these coping mechanisms that will pull them out of this tract of hiding behind this mask and letting these things beat them down to a point where they don't feel worthy enough to be around anymore, to live life anymore. So I have a question. Has social media use created any masks in your life? Don't worry, you don't have to answer me. You can just, keep an inner dialogue with yourself. That's totally fine. So the second key point that I have to talk about is disjointed. So these are kind of similar terms, right? They're a little bit close, but this is lacking a coherent sequence or connection. But I want to use this in a little bit different context. So I more want to talk about this as being a breaking or severing of a person's connection. Whereas the disconnected from lacking contact with reality is more of us deluding ourselves into thinking this. This is when people either intentionally or unintentionally break that connection with our reality. This is more like when I'm talking about people using cyberbullying, which, again, I never thought that would be a significant problem in the United States or in the society, but it is. People are mean to other people, whether it be intentional or unintentional. Now, part of this has to do with the fact that as we use these technologies, we kind of dehumanize ourselves. It's easier to say things to people when you're not face to face with them, right? Yeah, I mean, sure. And how many people have read a text message or something from a significant other and it caused a fight because you didn't interpret it the way that it should have been interpreted? Hands? Any man who didn't raise that hand, I know that you're lying to me. I know in my bones that you're lying to me. I know that that's happened. So there's that phenomenon, right? So there was a professor called Albert I can't ever pronounce this guy's, Moravian. 1971, he did a study that talked about communication is only 7% verbal. So 55% of it is body language, and 38% of it is the tone of voice in which you use. Now, this study is oftentimes misused, and it's kind of sort of been debunked a lot in the past because of the fact that there's a lot of subtext to a conversation that you can't really control in this specific setting when it comes to interaction. Do you know the person? What is the topic that you're discussing about? These kind of things. But there's still some validity to the science, just based off of the question that I posed to you about the text message and whether or not it's caused an argument because you misinterpreted it. We as human beings, when we communicate with each other, we need that. We need that tone and body language to be able to properly communicate with each other. So yeah, there are instances when we use technology that things are taken out of context or not interpreted the correct way. And those are the unintentional things that I'm talking about that can cause this disjointment. Some people are just mean. I don't know a better way of putting it. Teenagers, you guys are brutal to each other sometimes. So the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you would want to be treated. I'd like to amend that rule a little bit for the context of, technology interaction. If you wouldn't say it to somebody's face, you probably just shouldn't say it. That's one of those things, right? That's part of that dehumanization. Well, I don't have to worry about the reaction because I'm not around them, so I can feel free to say what I want. Okay, be careful. That's a slippery slope that you're going down. Because as you're thinking that way, that also leads you to look at people in a different light. And that will affect the way that you interact with people face to face too, eventually. If you become that person is going to be the person that you are. It's a scary notion, but that is reality. You have to be mindful of these kind of things. All right, so the second question that I have is, has social media use sabotaged how you see yourself or others? The third point is disabused. So disabuse is to persuade someone that an idea or belief is mistaken. So that's what I'm up here to talk to you about today. Okay, I'm up here to try and dissuade you from thinking that these things are just the way that things are. You have more control than that. To the masked. This seems to be a simple concept, but know that because you take breath and get to live life, you're inherently worthy in the eyes of God. You don't have to hide behind this mask. You don't have to be this person that you think you need to be, because the person that you are already has inherent worth to the Lord. He sees past all that garbage that's on Facebook. He knows who you are. He knows what you're struggling with. You don't have to feel like you need to be that person. Reach out. Get help. Reach out to your loved ones. Reach out to your pastor. Pray. Pray to God. For those people that are the disjoiners, whether it be unintentional or intentional, I challenge you to be mindful. Be ever present in the idea that your faith and who you are is completely compelled by how you see others and how you interact with others. And without knowledge of that, you may indeed either intentionally or unintentionally hurt somebody. Think of it this way. If that person is hiding behind a mask and you say something that is mean to them, how do you think that affects them? Yeah, sure, you might interpret it as, oh yeah, that person's always happy and everything. They've got thick skin. They'll be able to take this. It's just a joke. Well, guess what? In that message, the joking context didn't come through. And that person's already depressed. And now you've pushed them to a point where they want to hurt themselves. How do you live with something like that? How do you make that okay in your mind for the rest of your life that you may have caused somebody to kill themselves? I know, it's a hard thing to talk about, and I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to belittle or beat down anybody. I'm just trying to make sure that you guys understand that from a standpoint of what you say and how you interact, whether it's in person or over social media, these things have effect on others, and we have to be mindful of that. So, the last question is, do you know that who God made you to be has immeasurable worth? It's part of that question that I asked with the masked people. But it also has context with the other. You have worth. Your worth is not based off of who you are on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or how many likes you get from one month to the next. That's just luxury. That's all that is. We often miss the simplest answers to the question. The great thing about technology is, if it causes you to be a person that you don't like to be, all you have to do is reach over to the outlet and unplug it. Disconnect from it. Get away from it. It's the same thing with alcohol abuse, drug use, gambling addiction. There's groups of people out there that will help you. You just need to understand that if you don't like to be the person that you are on Facebook, Instagram, all these social media outlets, all you have to do is unplug from it. Get away from it. Stop using it. Social media was created as a luxury, as a means of communication for the entire world. It is by no means a requirement to live life. Always remember that. It is used as a potential for you to stay connected. Me being a perfect example, when I was in the military, I used Facebook to stay in touch with my parents and to see pictures of my nephews that I didn't get to see very often because he had just been born. Those are the avenues that you need to be utilizing these things for. Don't live your life vicariously through Facebook. That's not healthy and the right thing to do. And the other side of that coin is you need to be mindful of how your interactions affect others. Luke 17:2 says, "It would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone around their neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble." Rob and I had a conversation about how this connected and what this meant. We don't necessarily mean little ones as in small children or children. We more mean that to people that are new to the faith, new to the idea of Christianity. For those of us that have already instilled ourselves in this, if we cause one of these people to question faith, to maybe turn away from it, maybe go, I'm all good with what you're doing over there because your Facebook message is kind of causing me some anxiety and strife here. You might as well just wrap a big stone around your neck, dive on into Pleasant Hill. Because that's causing a disconnection with God. That's interrupting his work to try and bring more people to the faith. So it's always, always, always be mindful of what you're doing when it comes to social media and interactions on social media. Be present and mindful of these things. So the last question I have is your presence on social media creating sure footing for you and others, or causing someone to stumble? Whether or not that someone is somebody else or yourself to stumble, the question is still the same. We need to have a presence when it comes to this. We need to be mindful of everything that we say and do on social media, just as in life. Don't let social media be the dehumanizing factor of you. Don't let it be a mask that you wear to hide your true self. That's not a healthy way to use technology. And it can indeed be as serious as a heart attack. So I want to pray. So God, please allow us to see the balance between being digital and analog. Let us be able to use the tools that we've created as a means of potentiating the goodness of your life and of your beliefs. Let us be kind and gentle to each other. Let us ever be present and mindful of what we say. And let us understand that if we wouldn't say that to somebody in person, make sure that we don't allow ourselves to say it online and social media. Please, God, let us follow your beliefs, both digital and analog. Amen.